That was what it's all about. I wanted to be different. I didn't want to be like everybody else. I wanted to be just a little different. Someone with a suitcase ran past and knocked it over. And I'm thinking, I've worked how long for this trophy? And it's now in shards. And then within a matter of 10 seconds, somebody's cleaning it up. There's my career in a dustpan and brush. Adrian was just constantly on me the whole tournament, even when we weren't playing each other. Before we played each other in the singles, he was properly going at me backstage, and I thought, there's only one way to shut you up, and that's to beat you. And I did. My darts in my hand, I thrust them onto the stage in anger that we'd lost the final. One of them had ricocheted and hit a cameraman. He came up to me once and said, "You've got to remember, it's not you against the world." I said, "It feels that way, though." You know, the Ronaldos, the Tiger Woods, they have moments, don't they? That was my moment. I thought, I'm gonna win this, and people are gonna remember this. But I did wave him off because I thought, do you know what? I'm gonna make this about me. This is not about you. This is about me. I looked him in the eye and I shook his hand, and he hated me. After we went to the break, I just said to the producer, "Can I have a minute?" I went backstage and I cried my eyes out. And if it doesn't happen in 2023, then you'll be looking at Paul Nicholson, the commentator, for the rest of my career.
Hello and welcome to the first ever Dart Show podcast special. Joining me today, my name is 𝙿𝙖𝙧𝙩𝙬. I'm your host. We've got a former Lakeside champion in Mark Webster. Mark, how you doing?
Really good, really good. Looking forward to this. Grilling Paul Nicholson, see what he's about. So yeah, it's going to be some good fun. Yeah, I mean, looking forward to it.
Good, but today is all about one of the most methodical, charismatic, and maybe divisive characters in the sport of darts, Mr. Paul Nicholson. Paul, how you doing?
Yeah, not bad at all. Short sleeves for a winter day, so I'm going proper northern.
So, between you guys, obviously you've played each other a lot on the tour. Do you know your head-to-head record between each other?
It was pretty good in my favour at the beginning. It really was. I don't think Paul could get a victory off me. Paul was sort of in a different stage of his career. He was winning tournaments. I was sort of struggling, but I'd managed to beat Paul. But I reckon he's sort of overturned it now. I'd say he's won probably... I think I'm right. I probably won about the first four. Then it was all you then, I think.
Yeah, that sounds about right, actually. I remember being so frustrated at the start and thinking, I don't know how to beat you. And there were certain players like that I just couldn't get over. But I think when I got my first victory, I managed to get a few after that in some pretty good games, actually.
I mean, you have got an encyclopedic knowledge of your previous results.
Yeah. I'd say Paul's ahead now.
I think that was pretty much spot on. But the true numbers are 9 wins to Paul, 7 to you.
Yeah.
So it's pretty close.
That's about right. Yeah, I'd won a couple early doors, and it's been all Paul then, and we haven't played we've played, but not competitive for a long time, we?
Not for a while, actually, yeah.
UK Open qualifier back, and he won that one. So let's move on, Lou. Let's move on. Right, so Paul, we'll start with the very beginning of your career. In fact, your life, growing up. Were you born in Blyth, was it? Or born in Newcastle, growing up in Blyth?
Yeah.
Just tell us about what that was like for you growing up.
Yeah, I was born in Newcastle, so technically on the banks of the River Tyne, so I can classify myself as a Geordie. But grew up in a small village called East Hartford, just outside of Cramlington, which is very famous for Ross Noble, the comedian. And when I was 9 years old, we moved to Blyth towards the coast, which is where I would live until I was the age of 25. But the one thing that was constant through all of those years was darts. And it was always the one thing that I was better at than most. And I always wanted to do something with it. But times were very different back then. You just didn't know what you were going to do. There was no youth system. There was no development tour. There was no real ambition unless you had money. And if you were a great player and you had a few quid, then you would wait till you were 18 and then you would go to tournaments and start doing stuff. But one thing that a lot of people don't know about me is that when I was 16, my mates said to me, "You know what, you should just go and play darts as a 16-year-old anyway," because we were somewhat sneakily going into the pubs underage. And I gave them a fake name, and I started playing for the local team in Blyth. And I didn't get beaten. I just got a taste for winning matches. But then they found out that I wasn't who I said I was, so I got booted off the squad when I was 16. So I had to wait till I was 18.
So then going on from that, when did you start to think, that I could start to make a bit of money out of this? Was this something that you thought could be a potential career for you?
Not really, not at first. I think when I started playing locally, when I was 18, I was fortunate enough to meet some quite influential people at county level, like Steve Wanless, who was one of my early teammates. I met Gordon Dobie, Chris Dobie's dad. I used to play with him on a Tuesday night. And then I bumped into the likes of Gary Robson, Graham Stoddart, who was the first person I met who had given the PDC circuit a go. So I learned a lot from Graham in my late teens, early 20s. But it was never something that I thought that I could make money at or get to a certain level. I always just wanted to be a really good player and play county and just get some exposure that way. I never really found that level that you needed at county or Super League that made me think that I could be a professional. It wasn't until going to Australia where I found that next level, but I think maybe I just needed a bit of time to grow up.
So how did that move to Australia come about? That was obviously something that was a big influential part of your career, because we then saw you compete for Australia, and obviously you refer to a lot of the time as the Geordie Australian. But how did that move to Australia come about?
Like most things, it was by accident, because in around 2003, 2004, I was working for the Royal Bank of Scotland for NatWest Bank, and I wasn't very happy in life. In fact, I was very sad. I was quite depressed, and I thought, I think living in England just doesn't suit me. Maybe I need to go and see how big the world is. Around about that time, one of my friends said, "Oh, do you want to come out for a night out in Whitley Bay?" Which, for people in the Northeast, it's usually an automatic yes. But that night I just didn't want to go out. And I was adamant. I said, "Look, I just don't want to go out." But eventually I caved. And that night I met the person who I'd end up marrying, and she was from Australia. And I suppose it was just meant to be, because she had come into my Newcastle NatWest branch within the last few weeks to sort out our banking affairs. And we struck up a conversation, and, well, next thing you know, 6 months later I was moving to Melbourne.
That happened quick.
Very quick. I think it was quick because not only did we not want to be apart, she was going back to Australia in the summer of 2005. And I think the choice was I'd either stay in the UK, then move to America, or I'd just move to Australia and give that a punt. And Australia was the choice.
It's pretty poor on my part, Paul. I've never known that story. We've been quite close for a while. When you went out there, was it like, I'm going to have a go at really attack darts? Did you know about their circuit? Because the DPA, it's a good circuit, but you do some travelling. What's the plan to really think, right, I'm going to go for it? Because like you said, it probably similar to me, you don't think you're going to be a professional, do you? It's all about getting your county side and taking from there, but completely different in Australia. That it is a good opportunity, yes, to qualify and then come over here. But was that the plan once you got out there?
No, not at all. If anything, it was exactly the opposite. When I stopped playing for Northumberland in late 2004, I remember playing a game against Surrey and thinking, I just don't enjoy this anymore. And I decided to take my foot off the gas when it came to playing darts. I was actually only playing one night a week by the time I left. It was a Friday night in Guidepost for the Queen's Head, and I was just enjoying playing non-really competitive darts. But when I went to Australia, I wanted to play 1 day a week. But in Australia, when they see you're pretty good, they want you to go forward. They want you to, go to this tournament. Go here, we'll show you where to go. And I was fortunate enough to be under the tutelage of, multiple clubs at the time who were being very, very positive. I bumped into some other great players along the way, and I've made some really good friends who said you should go to play in DPA eventually. You should go to the Australian Masters in Geelong. And it was that tournament that changed everything. And it wasn't a win that changed everything. It was a defeat, believe it or not.
So how did your experiences over there then translate into the Paul Nicholson that we saw come over to the PDC, the character that we first saw come over to the PDC? How did that come about? How did you decide consciously that I'm going to enter the PDC and be the character that we saw back then?
Yeah, it was a conscious decision, I'm not going to lie. I had a conversation with my close friends at the Maroondah Social Darts Association, and one presentation, like they said, there's not really anybody out there with real attitude. I know that Peter Manley was giving it some big licks at the time, but the fact of the matter is there's nobody who's a little bit different. And I thought, well, I could do that. But at the time, all I wanted to do was play well and keep winning, because everywhere I went, I was picking up trophies and decent paychecks, and I was really enjoying it. But when I played county for Northumberland, I had this whole Neo from the Matrix thing going on. And I used to take my sunglasses off and put my regular glasses on. It was called the reload thing. It was a bit naff, actually. But I was a huge fan of the Matrix, and I thought the sunglasses were just part of who I wanted to be. And, it wasn't anything to do with, trying to mimic Daryl Fitton or anything like that. Consequently, I'd actually played Daryl in my first tournament in the PDC on the big stage. But it was just always something I wanted to do. And it translated into the person that I thought the asset would be eventually.
Mark, what was your first experiences of Paul in the PDC?
Well, my first was I was in the Grand Slam he qualified for. Obviously, kind of, I'm not going to lie to Paul and said I knew about him. I didn't at the time, but so you bumped into each other in the hotel and you played Gary Anderson. You hit a 180 or in your first 3 darts, hit a 170, something silly like that.
Yeah.
Won the game and he's give it to the crowd straight away. And I'm like, here we go. And it was a group that, it was a tough group. It was Kevin and Daryl as well, wasn't it? And I thought you coped with it well. I think a bit of controversy in that group. I think you were cornered and you're very unlucky. But no, I liked you. I thought here we go. He's a lad. But obviously I was a BDO player at the time, so I was outside looking in. And then you went to the Worlds and you were brilliant there. And then once I came across, we just sort of, I don't know, we just sort of got together straight away, really, because Paul was going out to Australia, I was chasing, but I thought this guy's determined, he wants to win at all costs. And the worst one I got with the question, because obviously what Paul was like on telly is different to the Paul we're speaking to now. And I was getting it, what's Paul Nicholson like? I said, have you ever spoke to him? He's nothing like what you see on the telly. We give you time. And it was just you were a great character, and you made me laugh when I was watching you play as well. There's some crackers, but did you ever think sometimes you overstepped the mark, Paul? That's what I think. Did you think, wow, I've got a bit too far here? Not. Do you think I've made a rod for my own back? That's the question I'm getting, because you still achieve things, but you were copping it at times, weren't you?
Yeah, at certain times I definitely took it too far, and now and again you think to yourself, should I have done that? Should I not have done that? And in modern society, people take it too far because they want clicks, right? It was different for me because Twitter wasn't really a big thing. Facebook was probably the biggest social media. And all of the things that I was doing was purely because I thought these were going to make me the kind of player that would be hard to beat. Be intimidating and go up there and just be a little bit different. That was what it's all about. I wanted to be different. I didn't want to be like everybody else. I wanted to be just a little different. And I did have my influences. The Matrix was a huge sort of visual inspiration. Wrestling was a big inspiring thing for me. Yeah, because he just got my blood pumping, and that was the kind of thing that I wanted to do. I wanted to bring that into darts. And what a lot of people don't know is that when I was doing that whole CM Punk mimicry thing, my Twitter following went through the roof. And I thought, well, yeah, that's cool. But at the same time, it was making me enjoy my game more than ever.
So was it just the showmanship and the grandeur of wrestling, the sort of thing that you wanted to bring into your walk-on and have a little slice of that yourself? Is that why you thought, this is what I'm going to do?
Yeah, I wanted to take the walk-ons maybe to another level, or maybe from a different angle. A lot of them were very samey in my opinion, and they were going in a pretty good direction. But I thought that maybe we could take them a bit further. A lot of the ideas that I had were poo-pooed by certain people at the top. I mean, Tommy Cox did not like me. He was not, in my opinion, at a progressive level the way that I was.
Traditional.
Yeah. He did things he wanted the way he wanted to. That's fair enough. And we owe him a debt of gratitude for the sacrifice he made to get us to where we were at that point. But I was thinking to myself, can I take this further? Can I get us into, somebody else's household? Can other people be interested in this? Different demographics, a younger audience, maybe audiences from the United States and things like that. That's what I was trying to do. He didn't get that. He just said, if you want to write stuff on your wrist, do it at home, not here. Those trousers.
Sounds about right.
That was in the World Cup, wasn't it? I remember you and Simon were doing it. But yeah, you were there, you were ready for the Premier League. That's what you change your demeanour. Barry Hearn always says, do something different. Don't be boring. Put yourself in the window for the Premier League. And you were probably one of the unluckiest players actually to win something and not get in. And if the Premier League had gone to 10 1 year early, you were definitely in. Did that hurt me? Because you kind of missed that boat there, Paul, didn't you? And you were on the. Everybody's you're thinking you're going to get in, and it never happened. You were probably hearing the whispers. Did that hurt that year?
It did hurt a little bit at the time, but looking back now with hindsight, I'm actually glad I didn't get picked. I think that might have had...
It's not all it's cracked up to be, I promise you.
I just get the feeling that maybe the travelling aspect and the constant exposure with the amount of intensity I was showing, it might have had a detrimental effect on my mental health a bit more. And I look at when Kevin Painter got in and when Andy Hamilton got in, maybe it was just meant to be that way because I had my own moments. And ultimately, you just think it wasn't meant to be. So I don't look at it, don't look back at it with some sort of sour nature. I just think it wasn't meant to be for me.
So Paul, we'll take it back to your first TV title, the 2010 Players' Championship Finals. I mean, your run to that title probably doesn't come much tougher than that, does it? Starting against Dennis Priestley.
Yeah.
Steve Beaton next, was it? And then you've beaten Adrian Lewis, Phil Taylor, Mervyn King in the final. I mean, that's a pretty tough run back then.
Yeah, it was. I was coming into the tournament, almost like a greenhorn, really, because it was only the second running of the tournament. I'd never played at the Circus Tavern before. One of my most vivid memories of this event was actually walking from Purfleet train station all the way to the Premier Inn in the freezing cold with a big suitcase and a big rucksack on my back, thinking, this is not as luxurious and as glamorous as people think. This is hard work. And all I was thinking about was playing Dennis, because I'd played him at the Worlds the previous year, and there was a little bit of revenge on my mind because of what happened at the World Championships about 6 weeks before that. There was a huge snowstorm, and I had to walk, like some other people, through 3 miles of snow and ice just to get there. And at the time, I was playing so well, probably the best I'd ever played. And I ended up losing 3 sets to 2 to Terry Jenkins, thinking that was quite unfair. I had a genuine shot of getting to the latter stages of that tournament, and the weather really did cost me something. But I thought this was a chance for redemption. If I can get through Dennis Priestley and get some confidence, I could have a very good run here. But you can see from my celebration when I beat Dennis that was almost like the weight off my shoulders, because playing against Dennis was very difficult for me. I looked up to him so much, and it was just nice to get that victory. And after that, I didn't feel any pressure.
So was that, in your eyes, the best moment of your career? That run obviously looks so tough on paper. You know, you've lifted your first TV title. Was that sort of the pinnacle of you coming over from Australia and finding your feet in the PDC, and then you've gone and pretty quickly won a TV title?
Yeah, darts was just, it was what I needed then. And was it the biggest thing that happened to me in my life at the time? I probably thought so right then, but now taking stock, it's one of the biggest things that happened to me, but I still think about my first Worlds as the biggest thing. Beating Dennis, beating Adrian, 2 players that I went to beat again for that title. I just get the feeling that maybe they were the 2 players that were going to write the story of my career.
We all want to know, how did you celebrate that title win?
Well, first and foremost...
Can I cut across? Sorry.
Cool, yeah.
Of course, yeah.
Because I know this. I wanted to ask you, you dropped the trophy, didn't you, Paul?
Well, it was reported in a tabloid newspaper that the trophy had been dropped. What happened was, I was rushing for my train from King's Cross back to Newcastle, and the trophy was in a cardboard box, and the plinth was in another cardboard box, and my friend Carly, who was with me, was carrying the plinth. I was carrying the crystal part. So they were asking for tickets before you get on the train, which was a bit odd. So I put my suitcase down, I put the trophy down, gave them the ticket, and in that moment, someone with a suitcase ran past and knocked it over. So it fell over and it went smash.
Smash the trophy.
So it was all over the King's Cross platform, and I'm thinking, I've worked how long for this trophy? And it's now in shards. And then within a matter of 10 seconds, somebody's cleaning it up. I think, there's my career in a dustpan and brush. So
what happened then? What did you manage to get hold of another one, or was that it? Was that the last time you saw that trophy?
Well, Carly said to me, look, we've got to get on the train. It's about to leave. And I said, I don't care what carriage we get on. If it's first class, I'll pay for the extra money. I don't care.
Yeah.
Get us on. I'm thinking to myself, what's just happened? So I called Dave Allen at the PDC and I said, you're not going to believe what's just happened. Somebody's just run over me trophy and it's smashed into smithereens. And he said, don't worry about it. Leave it with me. And within a week, Matt Porter and Dave Allen had said, look, we'll get you a replacement. We know this really means a lot to you. And I'm forever indebted to Dave and to Matt for getting that replacement, which is something that has not been smashed in the last 12 years.
Well, that's good. At least you managed to get hold of it again. It's probably sitting proudly back home.
Yeah, you can laugh about it now, but yeah.
Yeah, I can. I mean, did I celebrate after this? I got myself a car. I spent about 3,000 quid on a car just to get myself around because I didn't have a car at the time. So that's probably the one thing that I did buy. But at the stage I was in my life, I was still renting an apartment. I hadn't put down any roots. I actually banked most of the money and just lived off the proceeds for a while just to take a bit of pressure off. So by the time I'd paid the taxman, manager, I got a couple of sponsor bonuses, which was quite nice. But I didn't really spend anything lavish. I did buy a watch for about 700 quid, and I got it engraved on the inside with the date of the final day, the 31st of January 2010. Still got it. It stays in its box, and I very rarely wear it. It's just a memento of that time.
I wanted to ask you earlier, Paul, I always like to ask this. When someone wins a major event and comes from a bit left field, which you did you go there and think, I can win? And just, we all say, yeah, of course I think, but sometimes we don't think we can. Because if you're not, I hate the saying when they say, if you don't believe you can win the whole thing, well, let's be realistic sometimes, isn't it? And did you think you could win the whole thing? No, yeah, I respect that answer, because you hear these interviews, players, I wouldn't be turning up if I didn't think I could win. Well, come on.
I was in such a good in the present zone at the time, just about the next game that I play. And if you can find the footage of when I beat Phil Taylor in the semi-finals, I wasn't thinking about winning the title. I was more concerned about getting in the Grand Slam, because the Grand Slam was my debut TV tournament, and that held a very special place in my heart. And when I went to the board to get my darts away from 5-5, the camera was just above there, and I said, I'm in the Grand Slam.
And it was a couple of years, wasn't it,
mean that much to you,
yeah. It was a huge deal for me. And then when I went upstairs, the adrenaline was just flowing. And then I realised, I've actually got another game to play. So it was just autopilot stuff for the rest of the night. And luckily enough, I had enough energy to get through the game against Mervyn. It was almost like it was meant to be when it came to Mervyn. But as far as winning that tournament is concerned, I was in such a focused bubble about being in the now and just playing darts and enjoying it. The final emotion for me was just taking the glasses off and, is it over yet? Because that was a long day. I was in the venue at 9:30 in the morning.
Yeah, it was 3 games that day, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, quarters. I was going to say that's a tough slog, especially the calibre of the opponent as well.
Yeah, I didn't leave the venue until 1 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah. We'll move on. 2012, the World Cup. Arguably, probably the most famous final in that tournament. I know it might be a painful one to talk about, but I mean, losing to England in that sudden death leg, in general, the nature of that final, I mean, that must have been an incredible thing to play in, first and foremost, looking back, but a painful one to take at the time.
Yeah, the thing about that final was that, playing with Simon at the time was kind of difficult at the start of that tournament, because we'd fallen out before this tournament. And Mark probably remembers in 2011 when we were in Ireland, Simon and I played each other in a match in Killarney, and it ended up me and him walking different ways. We were not talking to each other for months. So
I need to watch, mind.
Yeah.
Coming into the World Cup, we buried the hatchet, and we said, look, this is not about us. This is about us playing with the shirt on and doing this for Australia. And we had a proper chat, and we buried the hatchet, and we said, right, let's move on. And we never had a crossword after that, which was terrific. But I think that tournament was important for our relationship, for us to bond. I think I just found another level of aggression. I thought maybe this is something, that I could do for Simon to, give him some, further fame in Australia, because he was the man. I was his wingman.
Yeah.
He was the chairman of Australian darts for me, and I just wanted to help him out. And I wanted to pay my debt to Australia for everything they'd done for me. And I thought the perfect way to do that was to win a World Cup. When we got England in the final, I thought, right, I want to play Lewis, because I've got such a good record against him on the stage.
Yeah.
And consequently, I've never lost to him on a big stage. But there was just so much animosity between Lewis and us. Taylor was like a rat in the corner. He was just...
I was going to say, Taylor wasn't embroiled. 𝙎𝙖 wasn't playing well at the time. I know he just won the world title. He didn't play well in that final, did he?
No.
It was all about sort of Phil, and it was a bit of a, not a miscarriage of justice, but for 𝙎𝙖 to hit the winning double, he wasn't at it that weekend, was he? But no. I know you and him had a little bit at the end, and I remember you were obviously upset, and why wouldn't you be? And then there was some little needle there, but yeah, it was a strange one in a way, wasn't it?
Yeah, there's a backstory to it. Adrian was just constantly on me the whole tournament, even when we weren't playing each other, talking about the whole England Australia thing and how I shouldn't be playing for Australia, and he had every right to come up to me and mention that. But when he puts the England shirt on, he turns into a very different person. And I suppose that's the case in a lot of sports. But before we played each other in the singles, he was properly going at me backstage. And I thought, there's only one way to shut you up, and that's to beat you. And I did. And when we went into the final eliminator at the end, it was just pressure like I've never felt in my life. It was insane. But Taylor in that one, he was just doing his thing, just trying to play darts. If anything, trying to temper Lewis. And me and him were just like, zzz, proper electricity between us. And the captains were just saying, what's going on between these two?
Yeah, I remember 𝙎𝙧𝙧𝙩 sort of hit the winning double, went to celebrate, and Taylor was like, be a bit respectful. And Whitlock was the same. He took it all right. It was all really about you and Adrian, wasn't it? You were the ones fired up. And it became like a bit of a duel. But it was the World Cup, the format was very sketchy, wasn't it? It was a lot of darts, Paul, wasn't it? So for you to have won that World Cup, it'd been some achievement because I think it was something like 2 pairs, 2 singles, day off, then a pairs, and it was really a long format. So you'd have earned it if you'd won that World Cup.
Yeah.
And,
I actually thought that when I threw for the double 10 on the 56 checkout, I thought it was in. It was really close.
Yeah.
But when it left my hand, I thought this is in this. And that would have been the perfect payback for everything that Australia had ever done for me. And I would have gladly handed that trophy to Simon Whitlock. But there's something that happened after the final that a lot of people don't know, and they should know. Adrian got a little stick for giving me some stuff on camera, and I just stood there and took it. But I did something that was very wrong after that final, and I got fined by the DRA for it, and I take full responsibility for it. My darts in my hand, I thrust them onto the stage in anger that we'd lost the final. One of them had ricocheted and hit a cameraman. So I didn't realise where one of the darts had gone, but Adrian did know. And when he was chastising me, it wasn't anything to do with the final. It was to do with the fact that I slammed the darts on the floor, and he said that was wrong because he knew that one had hit a cameraman.
And that was just out of pure frustration.
Yeah, absolutely. But that should never be condoned.
No.
I did that twice. And funnily enough, I did it later on that year. So I hadn't learned my lesson. The DRA took some money from my pocket, rightly so. And I don't think anybody should really criticise for Adrian Lewis for giving me a telling off in that moment, because I deserved it.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned there about representing Australia, what it meant for you. But some people will be wondering how it come about that you did represent Australia. And then what did that mean to you to wear those colours, to play representing not only yourself but a country that you say has given you a hell of a lot? And for you, Mark, playing in the World Cup, what did it mean to play for your country?
Yeah, it was fantastic, and obviously the World Cup, we kind of got it off the ground a little bit. I think there was a match between, I don't want to bring it up, but I think it was the sort of the standout tie when we played Australia in the first World Cup. It was in Rainton Meadows, it was getting snowed off, and the Spaniards won the first game, and it really sort of caught the imagination. And then we played Australia in the semi-final, and it was a proper sort of underdog, me and Barry Bates, but the format played in their hands. I think the first World Cup, people were sort of watching it going, wow, I'm not sure about this. It was brilliant, wasn't it? And then from there, but yeah, just when you played, it was a different pressure, but a nice pressure. But Paul will tell you, you throw in, you're like, oh my God, what's he thinking? Your partner. That was the big thing. What's your partner thinking? Because if you throw in for not just yourself, another player, and that was the hard part, because look, Simon would have never gone, and vice versa, would never say, come on, Paul, you don't criticise, but you thinking, wow, he must be thinking, what am I doing with him? But it was a different pressure, but a fantastic event, and that's what playing for your country should be like. It should bring that pressure, but the honour of it as well, it was fantastic. I still love it now, even though I'm not involved.
Sticking with the World Cup, we'll move on to another highly talked about game, 2015, playing against the Belgians. And I'm stirring the pot a little bit here, but these are the games that people remember, that stick in the mind. And there was certainly no love lost between you and 𝘿𝙧𝙧𝙩 back in 2015.
Do you know what? Kim and I have always gone on pretty well, but when we play darts, it's like two fireworks combining and going bang. When we first played at the Worlds, it was an encounter to remember, and Kim didn't do anything wrong in that game, and he didn't do anything wrong in the World Cup games either. It's just wanting to beat each other at any cost. And when you got two players that want to do that against each other, fireworks will fly. There were gestures in that game. There were, cutthroat gestures, which we all got fined for, apart from Simon, because he didn't do it. But there was nothing sinister about it.
Apart from Simon, because he didn't do it.
He didn't know what was going on. He was just playing his game.
He was just doing his thing. I mean, he was clean cut, but the 𝘿𝙧𝙧𝙯 boys and me, obviously they took what I did the wrong way. I didn't get rid of Kim in the singles. If I had, we wouldn't have had that pairs, quite frankly.
Oh, you should have done, Paul.
Yeah, I had my chances.
Yeah.
I should have taken him out.
Up,
I mean, that hurt.
Yeah.
I walked off stage without shaking his hand. It wasn't a show of disrespect. It was a case of, right, let's get the pairs on then.
Yeah, it's the second singles rubber, weren't you? So you just literally just got to turn on your heel and get back up there.
Yeah.
Was it his celebrations in that singles game that were starting to get under your skin? I mean, he was giving it, obviously, he come back from 3-0 down. He was giving it, real large to the crowd. And obviously, you're standing right next to him when he's roaring in your ear. Was that something that started to bother you?
I can say, hand on heart, that didn't bother me. It was all about me telling myself off for losing a 3-0 lead. I had my chances to beat him. I was the one who was telling myself off. And when I walked off stage, it was right. Scrub that. Now we win the pairs and we go forward. But that pairs match was me looking like Grumpy Cat. I was so angry with myself that I just couldn't get past it. And that was what was wrong with my career between, say, 2012 and around 2016 when things started to go really wrong for my game. Yes, I got injuries, but mentally, I was just telling myself off too much. Your agent, Jason, who was a close friend of mine, he came up to me once and said, you got to remember, it's not you against the world. I said, it feels that way, though. And I've cut myself a break the last few years, trying to take some pressure off myself in many facets of life. But at the time, I just felt like everybody was watching me. I felt like I had the weight of the world on my shoulders, and if I didn't perform, then I felt like a nothing.
So talking about the World Cup, just how important is it to have such good camaraderie between you and your teammate? How influential is that when you then go to play the games, especially the doubles games, when you can then rely potentially on your teammate? You know that he's going to be backing you up.
Monstrous.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a reputation of being a good player on my own, but from a pairs perspective, I didn't have a great deal of exposure to that when I played in England or Australia. But I already knew that Simon Whitlock was one of the best pairs players in the world even before the World Cup started. I saw him win countless amounts of doubles comps in Australia with Ian Brown and some of the other players he played with in New South Wales and Queensland, and he was just titanic at it. So I had 100% faith in Simon Whitlock, and I felt like a kid at Christmas. I mean, talk about being given a pairs partner. You think, they're not going to come any better than him. I had so much faith in him, and he got me out of so many jams and pairs. I just knew he's going to hit this. And I was surprised he didn't hit the winning shot, actually, in 2012. I thought it was pretty much there for him and his destiny. But I think Mark can say, because he's played with multiple people in the World Cup. I just got the one player. But I had so much faith in Simon when we played together.
Yeah, I played, obviously, I had 4 different partners. Barry at the beginning, great character. He was struggling with injuries at the time. He put in the right shift that weekend. We played a lot of games. And obviously Barry phased out. Then I had Richie, and I could talk about Richie, but Richie Burnett was like sort of a little bit of a hero of mine because he, last Welsh world champion before I won it. But he was hard to explain. He didn't do anything that rubbed off on me, but he just got fired up. He just told me, because I was a higher seed, he'd stick me where you want. And only with Richie, I kind of shuffled the team because I knew, I remember I deliberately wanted to play Adrian Lewis once, so I put him against him because they'd had something to do as well. People fall out with Adrian, don't they? What's going on? But and then I had a little spell with Jamie, but 𝘿𝙖𝙧𝙦 was the one, and I feel like I harp on about him, but 𝘿𝙖𝙧𝙦 was just, his confidence rubbed off of me. His confidence got me confident, and it was kind of my little final hurrah, my final high in darts, that World Cup. And you talk about your partner sort of just taking, he didn't want to leave, he left all the sort of captaincy stuff to me, but anything he said, I'll go first, all the time first. There was none of this tactical, I'll beat them, you'll beat the next one. He rubbed off on me, and it worked. And to have a partner, and Paul had Simon Whitlock, who's very confident, it helps. And particularly that last World Cup for me, I was unconfident, my throw was awful, and I was so worried about letting 𝘿𝙖𝙧𝙦 down because he was going one way, I was going the other. And just the partner is massive, and their influence can really help get you the success in the World Cup. And Paul having Simon, that stability really helped Team Australia.
Paul, if we could row back a little bit, obviously you spoke then about your relationship with 𝘿𝙧𝙦𝙀 away from the board. That was, you say, a very positive one. Kim's a nice guy. You're a very different character off the hockey to who we see on the hockey. But if anyone's to Google you, go on your Wikipedia page. There's quite a detailed section about your feud with Phil Taylor. That's obviously started sort of 2010 era. Just tell us a bit about that. You famously sat down on one of his walk-ons, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
These sort of antics. Was it a real animosity between you and Phil, or was it just something that to try and get an edge over him?
I think for a small period of 2011, there was some genuine animosity between us. It wasn't on my part, because I was the one that was beating him. It was 2 television events that I'd played him in. I'd beaten him in both by the odd leg, but he didn't like the fact that I'd beaten him on those 2 occasions, because they were 2 very costly defeats for him. Because at the time, he was at his height. He was borderline unbeatable. So I think when I look back at it, was I that influenced by hate towards him? No. But did I want to take him out? Absolutely. I saw too many players in Players' Championship events and TV events who just felt scared around him. And I said, what are you scared of? I'm going to go and give it a go. But he tried every trick in the book to try and beat me. Not from on the hockey, because on the hockey he was always straight as an arrow. But beforehand, he would try and make eye contact with you. He would try and, jab you in the ribs like this and just try and tell you a little story beforehand, which would get in here. This is all the stuff that Eric Bristow taught him. So I admire the fact that he was trying to get me mentally, but he couldn't crack me mentally. I think that stuck with him a little bit.
One of his big ones, Paul, we bull up blue, don't we? And he would you'd say he won the ball. If I win the ball, I'm going first. Give yourself the best chance. He'd win the ball and he'd stick you in, thinking I'm going to break you first leg. And that was one of his big ones, wasn't it, Paul? And on that occasion, he threw first and that decided, didn't he?
Yeah.
I think the controversy came from that wave. And if you were waving goodbye to him, good on you. But you say it wasn't. But no, I think it was a good little period for you too. I was standing by watching it, and it was good. And I think what jumped out at me was we're going to meet one day, and I'm going to put him to bed. I'm sorry.
People still ask me about that comment. It was so off the cuff. I was still high on adrenaline from beating Colin Osborne in a match match. And that was my first win at Blackpool. Yeah. So I was high as a kite. I was thinking, I finally got a win at Blackpool. Place I didn't enjoy playing at. And then I'm thrust in with Dave Clark, asked about this from, the previous month? Mm-hmm. Do you not want to ask me about what's going on with Colin? And, I'm playing Barneveld next. They were more interested in talking about Phil Taylor, which is fine. But what a lot of people don't remember, and if you want proof of this, I still have the article in plastic. He went to a national newspaper and called me disrespectful. And I thought,
well, for the scrapbook. That.
Yeah, I've still got the paper. I didn't get a right of reply in that paper, which annoyed the living hell out of me.
Yeah.
But I can be honest about it now. In that moment, when I had 8 with 3 dots, I knew I was hitting it.
Yeah.
Because in that corner of the board, that was my territory in 2011. I was owning it. I knew I was going to hit it, and I did think, what am I going to do to make this a moment? And that's what sports people do.
Yeah.
The Ronaldos, the Tiger Woods, they have moments, don't they? That was my moment. I thought, I'm going to win this, and people are going to remember this. So as soon as I waved, I'm going to take the lie away now. I told Dave Clark a lie at the time, just to try and keep it politically correct. But I did wave him off. Because I thought, do you know what? I'm going to make this about me. This is not about you. This is about me. I waved like that, away from him. And then I high-fived someone in the crowd. And I've actually found out recently that was Ryan Palmer.
Oh, right. Okay.
Our mate from Bristol. Right. And I walked over. And if you look at what happened next, I looked him in the eye and I shook his hand. And he hated me right there and then. And I thought, you can hate me all you want, but I'm the one going through at the quarters.
At the time, did you have that sort of feeling of invincibility against players like that? You're saying that, he was giving you the digs in the rib. Was that also a bit of a sign of respect towards you that you thought potentially, Paul's going to come on here and beat me? I need to get in his head. And did you feel that, I can easily do this?
I knew I could beat him. Yeah. And I wasn't me just being cocky. It was looking at previous behaviours. I'd beaten him imperfectly. I'd done it by a close margin. I didn't know what was about to happen in the next match, but I'd beaten Gary Anderson that afternoon. I had won Players' Championships that season, beaten Terry Jenkins in a final. When I won in Crawley in the April, I'd beaten Adrian Lewis in a final. I'd beaten Gary Anderson in the semis. I'd beaten world champions at the time, or about to be world champions. And I thought, well, if I'm not confident now, I'm never going to be confident. So I thought, go with it. And that's exactly what I was doing. But Phil was another level at the time. And we're talking about the time where he was hitting 2 9-darters in a Premier League final. He was winning pretty much everything. So he was a big mountain to climb. But if I was never going to beat him then, I was never going to beat him anytime.
You say another level, Paul. He had that. You were nervous playing him, weren't you? Do you know, like the first couple of legs, you were like, they had to go okay when you play Phil Taylor. For me, I don't know what it was like for you. If you sort of got, say, went 3-0 down, you had your throw broken, it was a long, they had to go well. I mean, I think that would be the contributing factor. I mean, people forget as well, I'm glad you mentioned it, Paul had beaten Gary Anderson in the afternoon as well. So to get rid of them two in the same day in the UK Open is some achievement. And I thought it was brilliant. I loved it. And I'm glad you the wave off. When you used to get that spiel, I wasn't waving him off. Of course you were.
Yeah.
Of course you were.
Yeah.
And we knew you were. It was good. It was part of the sport. It was great.
I mean, they stopped the game on board 2 at the time because everybody was watching ours. It was disrespectful to Dave Chisnell and John Bowles on board 2. They had to stop their match. But it was a great moment. 2011 summer was all about that match. It was terrific. And we played each other again in the Europeans quarterfinals in Dusseldorf the following month on ITV. I think Sky were devastated that it was on another network.
He got on the blocks really well there as well, didn't
Yeah.
he? Like, I think he got 3-0 in front, 5-3. I think he's going to do him again here. He's got him. That was where I was thinking, he might have Phil here. He might be the man that's going to beat Phil Taylor on a regular basis. And he rallied well there, to be fair. But that kind of buried a hatchet, that game, didn't
Yeah,
it?
it did. I mean, what a lot of people don't remember about that match at the Europeans, it was well-spirited. It was built up to be a grudge match. We didn't play it like that. We had a really good game. And it's unfortunate that a lot of that footage has been lost. But there were 2 finishes in that match that Phil took out. And if he didn't, I got him. I was at a certain... I think I might have been 8-7 up or possibly 7-6 up. And I'm sitting on 47, having a great leg. And he takes out 129 on double 6. And you think, oh, that's stung. And then he takes out a big finish. I think it was 138 to win the match. And you think, if he doesn't take those 2, I've got him by that odd leg again. So that was the difference between him beating me and not and me getting the result against him. They were great games.
We'll move on now to potentially a more painful part of your career, the slide towards eventually losing your tour card. How did that feel for you, knowing that you were on the downslope in effect, and then eventually losing your tour card and not being a professional player anymore?
It was difficult. I knew that my form wasn't to the same level. I know that other players and all these young kids coming through were starting to get to new levels, making it harder to get yourself into tournaments. But I guess my life was changing as well. I suffered really badly with anxiety in 2014. The match play there was the real low point of my career. I know a lot of people think that the World Cup final might have been a low point, but the 2014 match play was a real low point. I beat Robert Thornton in the first game. I was not in a good place. I got fined during that game for telling the crowd to go and do something. And I was told by the DRA after that game, you will be fined. And I thought, right, I'll take it on the chin and make sure we don't do it again. But little did I know that my mental state was so bad that I would take it to another level against Wes Newton. But I suppose I've got to put it on the record. Wes Newton, God, it's like having a splinter under his skin for about 5 years. As much as I loved him, I just couldn't get rid of him. He cost me more money than anybody. And it was always him. And in Blackpool against Wes Newton, that is a bad place to be when you're in a bad mental spot, because he is in his own backyard and the noise was just acidic.
You suffered with injuries as well, didn't you, towards the later part of your career? I mean, that coupled with you mentioning the mental health problems, was it just a perfect storm in your confidence being low and then, losing games off the back of that? Was it all just coming together at the wrong way, in the wrong time?
Yeah, there was a period between the summer of 2014 and the summer of 2015 where everything seemed to be going wrong. My form was slipping, and I remember coming back from going to see my family in the northeast to my apartment in Sussex, and I think it was about 7 at night, and I thought, well, I'll have an hour's throw before I go to bed. And my first dart, when I was aiming for the treble 20, it hit a 3. And I felt something go in my wrist. I thought, what's that? So I went to the physio the next day and said, oh, it's the early signs of tendinitis in your wrist. So you might want to survey the option of changing your throw. And I thought, oh, this is not what I need. But after that, I made a conscious decision that maybe I need to change my throw a little bit. But around about this time, my ranking was slipping. I wasn't in any European Tour events. And I started looking for a job. This is a major champion within darts, someone who's won multiple PDC events. I've got enough money in the bank from the sale of my house, but I don't want to touch that. But I didn't have any darts money coming in. I didn't have any sponsors. and I went to Piltdown Golf Club in Sussex for a job interview, and I got the job as a bartender. And at that point, everything changed that summer, because Dave Allen called me and he said, "Do you want to commentate on the European Tour event in Vienna?"
When you lost your tour card the first time, Paul, obviously the form deserted. I think it was ridiculous the second time you lost it, wasn't it? I mean, we were in the press room in the back room. It was like a list of scenarios, and unfortunately we were just ticking them off, weren't we? That one's gone. There was like, maybe, I don't know, we're talking, I'm exaggerating, 10, 15 things that had to go against you.
Yeah, we're going to come on to that. I mean, the pro that you are now as a commentator, I remember that, as you say, a list of scenarios, and it was getting to that final game, and you then commentated at the World Championship, if I'm not mistaken, on TalkSport, on the game as you lost your tour card.
Yeah,
I mean, that must have been,
isn't it?
Must have been a real painful moment, yet you had to obviously remain professional.
Yeah.
How was that for you?
I knew the scenario when I was slated for this game by my producer, Matt Gubbins, and I thought, if Luke wins this game, I know that my card is gone, but predominant thing for me, be the pro that you are. Call this game the way that Luke or his opponent would want them to do it. And that's exactly what I did. I gave it the gumption that Luke deserved for winning that game, because he was having a great run. Luke had no idea. He had no clue about the scenario. He was just focused on trying to win the match, and fair play to him. But after we went to the break, I just said to the producer, "Can I have a minute?" And I went backstage and I cried my eyes out. And I thought, that hurt a bit. But you know, I look back at it now and I think it only hurt because it meant so much. And you know, it was in my hands. I shouldn't have lost to Kevin Burness. I prepared really poorly for that game. The game before that, 𝙎𝙖𝙧𝙦 against Barnard, just felt like it was never going to end.
I commentated on that game. It was a long game, wasn't it?
Awful. So it didn't help that game seemed to go on forever. But I prepared poorly for the Burness game. Obviously, we had the power cut in that game as well. It just wasn't a thing. It was just, all right, okay, let's figure it out. Let's move on.
Yeah.
Fine margins, of course, set play. It was 3-0, but it didn't feel like a 3-0.
No.
I won plenty of legs, but it's just one of those things. You have to take it on the chin. And if I'd have beaten him and then played Gary Anderson after that later that night, then I probably would have saved me card if I'd have beat Kevin.
And you may never have lost it, Paul, because you were going then into the next year, your tour card, and you weren't defending a great deal. I mean, I'm not saying 3-4 years on you'd still have it, but I don't think you'd have lost it the year after. And then it was such small margins, and it must have been a tough one to take. And I mean, I understand why you didn't go to Q school that year, because I wouldn't have gone.
I had so much on my plate as well. I mean, I was doing the Lakeside straight after doing PDC Worlds. I had so much on my plate, and I thought the mental space I was in and all of the things that I'd done previously, I wanted to learn from them. And I thought, if I go to Q school now, I'm going to go in it as a shell of me. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to cause myself more damage. So I said, you know what, take a year off, figure out who you are, and then move forward. And obviously, soon after that, we had a little thing called COVID. And we started playing darts from our own homes after that. And more injuries surfaced after that.
So is that now the end of Paul Nicholson, the dart player? Are you ever going to think about going back? Are you going to give it one more go?
I've promised myself one more go, but only one. 2023 is the last opportunity for me to kick back in. I look at players like Peter Wright, Gary Anderson, and Steve Beaton. They inspire me still because they had the best starts of their careers in their mid to late 40s. So I am going to put the work in this year. I'm struggling with certain technical aspects of my throw. I've got to make sure that everything is right so that I can do 6 months of proper prep and getting the exposure that I need to uncomfortable situations. And if I can find the form that I need going into Q school, there's every likelihood that I'm going to get my card back for one last stint. And if it doesn't happen in 2023, then you'll be looking at Paul Nicholson, the commentator, for the rest of my career.
Well, Paul, Mark, thank you for joining us today. I mean, it's been a pleasure to talk to you about your career, some of the insights we got. This has been the Dart Show podcast special with Paul Nicholson.
Thank you.